So let's start with Hunter, right? We had the verdict come down. Actually, ironically, since given our topic today, it came down in the middle of your interview with the NRA's Doug Hamlin. What do you make of that guilty verdict?
It's interesting. I mean, I was talking to a lot of folks before the verdict came down who said I was going to get acquitted. There's no way you can get a fair trial in Delaware. Everybody knows the Bidens. And I kept telling people, take a step back here. The criminal justice system, 97% of felony cases in this country end up with a guilty verdict or a guilty plea, right? Yeah. That's just the odds. So if you're just playing the odds, Hunter Biden, unless he got a plea deal, was likely to be convicted. We couldn't watch the trial unless you were there in the courtroom. But I was following CNN's coverage, NBC's coverage, Town Hall's coverage. And, I think Abby Lowell, Hunter Biden's attorney, did a pretty good job of pointing out that there was no direct evidence that Hunter Biden was using drugs during the time period in which he had purchased that firearm. Problem for Abby Lowell is that there was a mountain of circumstantial evidence that Hunter Biden was, in fact, abusing drugs, including Hunter Biden's own words, right? Prosecution, I think, was very effective in using the audiobook of Hunter Biden's memoir. So the jury got to hear Hunter Biden in his own voice talking about, well, I left this California rehab in early September and I was clean for about 2 weeks. He talked about when he went to the East Coast, he went there in early October in the hopes of getting clean, not staying clean. There were the text messages that he sent to Hallie Biden, one the day after the gun was purchased, where he said he was waiting for a drug dealer named Mookie. One the day after that, where Hallie Biden asked him where he was, and he said, well, I'm sleeping on a car smoking crack. And, Lowell's excuse was, well, look, he didn't want to hang out with Hallie Biden. He didn't want to be around her. He was looking for an excuse so that he didn't have to be with her. But even if that's the case, Stephen, what were the excuses he offered? I can't see you right now because I'm waiting to get drugs, or I can't see you right now because I'm doing drugs. Now, if you're trying to show that your client was not using or abusing drugs at that time period, I don't know that there's an easy way to get around those texts, but it wasn't an explanation that was likely to jibe with the jurors, right?
Right.
So I think it was Hunter Biden was in a difficult position, especially because the judge had ruled beforehand, you can't raise a Second Amendment argument at trial. If you want to do that, you got to raise it on appeal. So he couldn't challenge the underlying statute of the law. In his own words, I think his own words were probably more fatal to his case than Hallie Biden's testimony, than the testimony of his ex-girlfriend. I certainly don't think it was a wise decision for the Biden defense team to put his daughter on the stand. And if you're going to put your daughter on the stand to testify in your defense, you better show up as well. And I think that hurt. That the jury got to hear from Hunter Biden through his memoir, but Hunter Biden refused to take the stand. It's always a dangerous thing for a defendant to do, right? Because you open yourself up to cross-examination. But if they put his daughter on the stand to sort of gather sympathy, to talk about her dad and his struggle with addiction, without having the courage to put Biden himself up there, I certainly don't think it helped the case. So I wasn't surprised that the verdict came down as guilty. When we heard that the verdict had been reached, after just a few hours of deliberations, I thought, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign for Hunter Biden.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree too on the facts of this case seem pretty stark in terms of, just establishing that Hunter likely was addicted to drugs during the period he bought and possessed that gun and knew it. And I thought that, the defense, it is, it's interesting because it is a viable defense often in situations like this to say that you weren't addicted at the time, because that's what the statute seems to require. So you could have been addicted previously or after the fact, but the prosecution generally has to show that you were addicted when you were buying the gun or lying, filling out the background check form. Because his three crimes are all basically the same crime. I mean, one is lying on the form, lying to the dealer, and then one is possessing the gun. But it all comes back to whether or not he was addicted to drugs during that period. And, it always seemed like a hard lift to get to this idea that he wasn't addicted for that brief period where he had this gun, that he was addicted before and he was addicted after, but not during these 2 weeks, really. Especially given what you just laid out there, the text messages. There was residue. I think they found cocaine residue as well on the pouch that he held the gun in. And so,
right. Hallie Biden had said that she found cocaine remnants of crack cocaine in his truck, and his daughter had said that the truck was clean when she dropped it off a couple of days earlier. That was particular. I mean, if there was testimony outside of Hunter Biden's own text messages and memoirs that were really damaging his campaign or to his case, that was probably it, right? Yeah. The fact that Hallie Biden said, yeah, I saw what drug paraphernalia, she didn't say what it was. She described remnants of crack cocaine. And then his daughter had said, well, I cleaned out the truck. It was clean when I dropped it off. Abby Lowell's contention was, well, maybe Hallie Biden. Maybe that was Hallie's crack. Hallie Biden got thrown under the Biden bus, by the way, during that trial, but which I'm guessing is going to make Thanksgiving a little awkward there going forward. But again, as you say, there was so much to overcome, right? And so I think maybe Hunter Biden and Abby Lowell were hoping that there would be a juror or two, although they only needed one, who would say, look, I think the statute is wrong on the face of it. I can't vote to convict this guy and possibly send him to prison when he seems to have gotten his life together. It was kind of a kitchen sink strategy, but it wasn't really coherent. I'm not sure what the whole point was about trying to raise questions about the gun sale itself, and maybe the Form 4473 had been altered in some way. Like, that just didn't make any sense at all to me as a defense. And so, maybe Abby Lowell dealt the best hand that he could play, or played the best hand that he was dealt. But it just, as you say, the bar was really high, and I'm not unsurprised by the verdict.